From the dawn of time, when light first pierced the void and order emerged from chaos, there has been an eternal struggle etched into the fabric of existence. A battle waged between the forces of divine goodness and the shadowy legions cast from heaven's heights. These fallen beings, once majestic angels, became the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture, embodiments of sin, temptation, and cosmic rebellion against the Creator's will. Their stories, whispered through sacred scriptures, ancient texts, and countless traditions, reveal not only terrifying agents of destruction and deceit, but also profound moral lessons about the nature of evil, free will, and redemption. As harbingers of pride, envy, lust, greed, wrath, and despair, the demons have shaped humanity's spiritual landscape for millennia, haunting the edges of faith and society, corrupting hearts, and challenging souls to choose between darkness and light. Their presence invites contemplation of a deeper, perennial conflict that exists not only in distant realms or mythical tales, but within the human soul itself. This epic narrative journeys through the origins, deeds, and enduring influence of these formidable adversaries, unveiling a tapestry woven with celestial battles, infernal kingdoms, human frailty, and the relentless hope that even in the deepest shadows, grace and virtue can prevail. Let us embark on this exploration of the worst demons of Judeo-Christian tradition, a saga as much about cosmic strife as it is about the intimate battles each person faces within. In the beginning, when the veil between the heavens and the earth was thinner, the universe trembled with the echoes of eternal conflict. Light waged silent wars against shadow, virtue glimmered beside sin, and within the hearts of mortals, the first seeds of fear were sown. These fears, dark and insidious, whispered legends of terrors lurking in twilight and nightmares stalking the borders of minds. Demons banished from glory, their purpose reshaped by a dreadful hunger for chaos. In the highest choir sang Lucifer, the morning star, whose radiance once rivaled the dawn. He was not the first to fall, but his rebellion was catastrophic. The host of heaven had watched as pride, subtle and all-consuming, unwound his angels' golden cords of grace. In silent counsel, Lucifer questioned divine order. Why should creatures lesser than us walk in the favor of our Creator? Why do we kneel for mankind molded from dust? He gathered those of like mind, their wings glimmering with the arrogance of would-be gods. And so the first insurrection was born. The battle, legend says, ruptured the peace of the celestial realms. Flashes of lightning became the swords of Michael and his loyal legions. Thunder, the clash of will against will. Lucifer, now Satan, was vanquished, his beauty marred, his glory corroded by envy and wrath. He and his followers, soon known as demons, plunged into the void, barred from returning to heaven. No longer beings of light, they prowled the shadowy places of the cosmos, thirsting for revenge on those beloved of God. With Satan at their helm, legions of the fallen found new purpose. Each became an embodiment of a deadly sin, a dark reflection of the virtues they once revered. The land of their exile became a churning labyrinth of contempt, the depths of hell itself. It was there that Satan, now crowned the Prince of Darkness, erected his obsidian throne and called to him the greatest of his followers, Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, Asmodeus, the blue demon of lust, Leviathan, the dragon of envy, and Belial, master of deceit. The four pillars of infernal malice stood ready to shape the fate of humankind. Beelzebub, once high among the cherubim, had the mind of a tactician, capable of sowing corruption with uncanny finesse. His affinity was for decay, not only of flesh but of principle, infecting the hearts of mortals with avarice and fear until communities crumbled and rulers bowed. In the wilderness, times of pestilence were attributed to him. The thick, swarming clouds of vermin, the crops rotting before harvest, the mournful shrieks of mothers as their infants succumbed to inexplicable fevers. To these, the ancients whispered, Beelzebub walks among us. Among the ruins of wasted cities, Asmodeus, demon of lust and perversion, wove his tapestry of temptation. In the tall shadows behind palace doors, he lounged in silks, watching the nobles dance their wicked minuet, betraying loves, breaking oaths, discarding honor for fleeting pleasure. His laughter was a seductive poison, and under its spell, even the most virtuous were known to falter. Tales of forbidden's rendezvous and passion that burned to ash were his calling card, and broken hearts, more than any blade, were his weapon. But none brooded deeper than Leviathan, the ancient sea snake whose coiling form encircled the roots of the world. Leviathan's envy was colder than the moonlit depths of his underwater domain. Any joy, any unity among mortals was a red rag to his ire, and he struck from beneath with invisible coils. Where Leviathan passed, nations fell to civil war, kings were betrayed by kin, and even the closest of friends found their faith in each other sapped and perverted into rivalry. Belial, by contrast, moved with grace among the courts and marketplaces of men. If Beelzebub was decay and Asmodeus lust, then Belial was pure, unalloyed deceit. Legends claimed he appeared as a trusted counselor, always ready to offer comfort with one hand and a dagger in the other. His tongue spun webs that trapped the unwary, and he delighted in turning justice into farce, valor into mockery, faith into fanaticism. The wise spoke his name only in whispers, for to invoke Belial was to invite a slow, suffocating doom. Each of these demons, feared as they were, spawned legions of lesser horrors, incubi and succubi, imps and grotesque spirits, who haunted crossroads, tombs, and the fevered dreams of mortals. Their names were legion, and their hunger for corruption unending. Early humanity, huddled around fires in the prehistoric dark, did not fail to sense their presence. Shamans and prophets saw infernal shapes in the smoke, while mothers taught their children charms to repel the evil eye. As civilization took root and grew, stories of these fiends were transcribed in sacred texts and carved into the stones of ancient temples. Names once whispered now appeared in scrolls and codices, used in prayers for protection, or, sometimes in those rare, desperate moments, to summon the demons themselves in hope of bargaining for forbidden's power. In the days of Noah, when the earth was corrupt before God and violence filled the land, the threat of demonkind became almost palpable. It was not only the Nephilim, mighty ones born of angels and mortals, that stalked the earth, but also lesser fiends who stirred men to jealousy, bloodshed, and blasphemy. The deluge, so said later sages, was as much a purgation of demonic influence as it was of human vice. After the flood subsided and the world was washed anew, the worst of the old spirits slithered back into the cracks and shadows. But the memory lingered, urging human societies to compile more potent rituals of exorcism and to record the names of powers and principalities. In Babylon, the Magi devised sigils to bind, copper discs inscribed with names traced from the stars, worn by priests when venturing near tombs or accursed ruins. In Egypt, elaborate rites summoned angels as witnesses to the banishment of abominations. In Canaan, sacrifices were made beside ancient standing stones, for even cities built of sun-dried brick could not wholly keep out the stalking dread of the night. Centuries passed, and the demons adapted, learning the language of law and power. They prowled the corridors of authority, whispering wickedness to potentates and enchanters alike. In the courts of kings, where a single word could doom thousands, Belial's silver tongue found eager listeners. Wars were waged as much in the dreams and ambitions of men as upon the fields of battle. A suspicious glance, an unmet promise, a whispered rumor, the subtle weapons of infernal kind could reduce entire kingdoms to dust and tears. Beware pride, lest you become food for demons, the prophet Isaiah warned. Beware despair, lest you open the gates to Leviathan and his kin. In sacred testament, demons became figures not only of fear, but also of explanation, For every unaccountable tragedy, every outbreak of plague or madness, there must be a cause, and in the ancient mind, that cause was alive and wrathful. As centuries became millennia, as empires rose and crumbled, as the desert winds erased the names of once great kings from the stones, the legends of these darkest adversaries remained. They were woven into every new tale, painted onto every fresh canvas of faith and myth. And the demons themselves, ever in search of new hosts, new instruments, watched, waited, and plotted, for the battle was far from over, and humankind still knew how to sin. In the shadowed corners of the human soul, where light bends and fractures, the infernal machinations of demons perpetuate their ancient vendettas. The tale of their dominion over despair, temptation, and ruin continues to unfold with relentless inevitability, weaving through the epochs like a dark thread unspooling from the loom of creation itself. Following their expulsion from the celestial throne rooms, Satan and his infernal brethren sought refuge and purpose beyond the bounds of heaven, a cruel and merciless kingdom forged in the crucible of their hatred. It was in this realm of torment, an abyss of suffering and flame, that the fallen found their new identities as princes of perdition and corruption. Their names whispered with dread, their forms a horrific reflection of their offenses. They embodied the sins and vices that would gnaw at the heart of humanity for millennia to come. The infernal hierarchy established under Satan's leadership was not static, but fluid and adaptive. Each demon held sway over particular aspects of human weakness, and their influence grew as mankind's civilization flourished and fell, each decay a grist for their dark mills. Beyond the four mighty pillars introduced previously, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Leviathan, and Belial, there existed further layers of infernal beings, each weaving their threads into the tapestry of human downfall. Take, for instance, Mammon, the demon of greed and wealth. While Beelzebub's slums of rot and corruption mirrored physical decay, Mammon's realm was built upon avarice and material obsession, the ceaseless hunger which warred within the hearts of men and women alike. Mammon, sometimes depicted as a bloated figure adorned in gold, held dominion over merchants, kings, and paupers, promising riches, but delivering nothing but spiritual bankruptcy. His whispers turned neighbors into rivals, friends into enemies, and nations into arenas of conflict, all for the golden lure that never truly satisfied. Then there was Azazel, the mysterious fallen angel demonized in several apocryphal texts, whose name became synonymous with wilderness and scapegoating. Azazel's role was subtle yet devastating. He taught forbidden knowledge, metallurgy, and weapon forging to mankind, gifts twisted into curses that unleashed death upon the earth. Legends portray him as a horned figure shrouded in smoke and desert sand, lurking beyond the edges of known civilizations. His presence brought not just physical destruction, but also moral decay, as mankind learned to fashion implements of slaughter from his teachings. The great realm of hell itself was structured like an infernal kingdom, divided into regions and spheres, each ruled by its own warlord demon. The famous seven princes of hell thus came to represent the cardinal sins and their demonic patrons: Lucifer, Mammon, Asmodeus, Leviathan, Beelzebub, Satan, and Belial. These principalities allowed the infernal forces to function with terrifying efficiency, spreading corruption on earth in multifaceted ways, infecting not only individual souls, but also entire cultures and epochs. Throughout the Middle Ages, the fear and fascination with such demons grew into a complex religious and cultural phenomenon. The medieval mind, educated largely by scripture and church tradition, sought to understand and combat this infernal threat through elaborate systems of theology, exorcism, and lore. The Malleus Maleficarum, a notorious treatise on witchcraft published in the 15th century, described in lurid detail the agency of demons over witches and heretics, portraying the demonic as real and present agents corrupting Christian society at every turn. Demonic possession was feared above almost all other afflictions. tales of possessed individuals contorted by invisible forces, uttering profanities in foreign tongues, flying through the air, or displaying unholy strength, became common as mechanisms to personify evil's power in the earthly realm. The priest's role as exorcist became a sacred, if perilous, vocation, relying on ancient rites, prayers, and holy symbols to expel the malevolent spirits back into the abyss. Even in more ordinary settings, demons influenced humanity in less direct ways. Anxiety, depression, sudden fits of wrath, and seductive whispers that led families to destruction, rulers to tyranny, and the common man to despair. All of these were interpreted as the work of unseen demonic hands. Their influence worked through the subtle erosion of virtue and the exploitation of human frailty. The Renaissance, that flowering of art and science, was not immune to the infernal. Alchemists, magicians, and occult practitioners sought knowledge beyond the sacred, sometimes invoking demons for secrets and power. Such dealings were fraught with peril, for demons were never generous patrons. Their gifts carried hidden costs, binding souls to eternal torment. The grimoires of this era, texts like the Lemegidon or Ars Goetia, cataloged demons extensively, naming their ranks, powers, and sigils. These books stood as grim reminders that beneath the veneer of progress lurked ancient shadows waiting to reclaim what was lost. Among these infernal subjects, the demon legion stood apart. Unlike singular demons, legion was a collective, a multitude of unclean spirits embodying unrestrained chaos and mass possession. The New Testament recounts the chilling story of Jesus encountering a man possessed by legion, a name given because we are many. This multiplicity of evil spirits rendered possession complete and terrifying, as the man's anguish became a symbol of humanity's vulnerability to overwhelming spiritual corruption. The darkest tales often focus on the intersection of human ambition and demonic temptation. The Faustian bargain, so ingrained in Western culture, epitomizes this tragic encounter. Faust, a learned man exchanging his soul for knowledge and power, is a narrative reflection of the demon's eternal strategy to ensnare the prideful and the desperate alike. Whether through whispers promising dominion or subtle manipulations coaxing doubt and despair, demons edged ever closer to the hearts of the humans they sought to damn. Legends also tell of the Witch of Endor, a figure who dared to summon the dead and the spirits of the underworld, demonstrating the fragile boundary between the mortal world and infernal realms. Such stories reinforce the dichotomy of sacred and profane knowledge, the thin line separating salvation from eternal damnation. It was a reminder that the worst demons are not always external forces, but can arise from human curiosity and hubris twisted by infernal influence. Moreover, the unpredictability of demons made them fearsome agents of chaos. Unlike angels, bound to obey the divine will, demons were embodiments of rebellion, willful, insidious, and clever. They found joy not only in destruction, but in deception, in planting discord where there was harmony, in fostering despair where hope still flickered. Their appearance, too, varied greatly across folklore and art, sometimes horned and fiery, sometimes shadowy and insubstantial, sometimes utterly cunning and human-like. This ability to shift made them adept at infiltration and corruption, able to masquerade as friends or guides, cloaked in lies as fine as silk or as harsh as iron chains. As Christianity spread through Europe and beyond, the demonological framework expanded, absorbing local pagan beliefs and reshaping them. The classical demons became intertwined with folklore spirits, witches, and other supernatural beings, many of which were reinterpreted as lesser demons or their minions. The result was a rich, complex demonological tapestry that varied from region to region, but retained a common core. Demons were the enemies of God and man. In the Americas, following European colonization, indigenous spiritual concepts blended, often violently, with the imported notions of demonic evil. Here, too, the stories of demons and malevolent spirits adapted, entwining with ancient local beliefs about spirits and the nature of good and evil. The cross-cultural encounter was another arena for the battle between light and darkness, where the devil's legions sought to claim new souls. The centuries bore witness to countless exorcisms, miracles, and tragic losses attributed to these demons. Saints and mystics bore witness to demonic temptations within themselves, fighting daily battles to preserve faith and virtue. These accounts illustrated an ongoing cosmic struggle, not just a myth, but a lived reality for believers. In the modern era, the understanding of demons has shifted somewhat, but remains a potent source of fascination. Psychology reinterpreted many of the symptoms once attributed to demons, though the spiritual dimension remains respected in many traditions. The stories of Judeo-Christian demons persist in literature, cinema, and popular culture, continuing to terrify and intrigue in equal measure. Yet, beneath the tales of horror and darkness lies a deeper message. Demons represent not just external adversaries, but the internal wars within every human heart. The battles against pride, envy, lust, greed, wrath, gluttony, and sloth. They are mirrors of human frailty and the existential threats to the moral order. And so, the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture endure, not only as fiends exiled from heaven, but as agents reflecting human shadows back to themselves. They walk invisibly beside mankind's steps, whispering and waiting, testing the strength of faith and the resilience of the soul. As history unfolded, the presence of demons remained an underlying force, shaping not only individual souls, but also the great currents of human civilization. The demons that had once been angels now moved as shadows, seeding discord in the hearts of kings, scholars, warriors, and common folk. Their influence was subtle and devastating, feeding upon the cracks that greed, pride, envy, and despair left in the human spirit. In the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah, the awareness of demonic forces took on a uniquely theological dimension. The Hebrew Bible is replete with references to evil spirits, unclean entities, and adversaries of God's plan, though rarely named with the full catalog of later demonology. Still, the concepts of Shadim, malevolent spirits, and Azazel as the scapegoat for sin marked the Jewish understanding of corporeal and spiritual evil. Rabbi traditions interpreted these as manifestations of rebellion against divine order, coexisting alongside angels who served as helpers and messengers. The demonic became intertwined with moral instruction, urging devotion and holiness out of fear as much as hope. The prophets warned of Satan's works, sometimes describing him as the adversary, the one who accuses men before God's throne, seeking tongues to speak in judgment and hearts to err. The Book of Job notably portrays Satan as the challenger who tests human faith by inflicting suffering, but it also reveals the limits placed on demonic power by divine command, a revelatory balance between free will, temptation, and ultimate sovereignty. Between these scriptural foundations and later Christian expansions sprang a rich tradition of demonology, one that enumerated demons, their ranks, and their vices with increasing precision. The Church Fathers, such as St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, reflected on the nature of demons as fallen angels who could not repent, cursed eternally and intent on the ruin of humankind. Their spiritual warfare was as real as any earthly battle, but it was fought with prayer, virtue, and the grace bestowed by God, not arms of iron. One of the most enduring teachings was that demons exploited the 7 capital sins to ensnare souls. Pride, the first sin and root of all rebellion, was personified by Lucifer himself. Lust bore the marks of Asmodeus, a destroyer of marriages and pure love. Envy, the festering wound that turned brother against brother, was Leviathan's delight. Greed and avarice were Mammon's trade. Wrath stirred the tempests of souls, while sloth lulled men into spiritual paralysis. Even gluttony, often overlooked, fed into demons' plans Excess of any kind weakened discipline and obscured clarity of faith. Medieval Europe saw a vivid imagination applied to these infernal archetypes. The monstrous bestiary of demons evolved, and with it came further lore of their physical appearance and powers. Gothic art and literature portrayed demons in terrifying detail, some horned and hoofed, others serpentine or bat-winged. Some grotesque parodies of human form meant to inspire dread and repel temptation. The demonological grimoires, including the Lesser Key of Solomon, catalogued their names and the methods by which they might be summoned or banished, a technical and fearful knowledge guarded by magicians and clerics alike. But alongside darkness stood resilience. Saints, holy men, and women were said to have battled demons both external and internal. The stories of Saint Anthony the Great, who endured siege after siege of temptation from demons in the desert, embody spiritual warfare writ large. His suffering reflected humanity's ongoing war, a daily test of endurance, faith, and virtue against the unyielding adversary, who would grant no peace. The Inquisition institutionalized this struggle, though often tragically conflating demonic conspiracy with heresy and human frailty. Infringements identical to demonic seduction were attributed to witches, often women caught in the terror and misunderstanding of their times. The witch hunts, while horrifying in their cruelty, represent the profound fear that demons might find entry through the manipulations of mortals seeking forbidden power. Demonology also thrived in cultural expressions. Literature, theater, and visual arts explored the boundaries of human nature's interaction with the infernal. Dante Alighieri's Inferno remains a pinnacle of such exploration, vividly visualizing hell's hierarchies and the punishment tailored to the sins that demons exploit. Similarly, Goethe's Faust paints a tragic portrait of the price paid when pride and curiosity are bartered for infernal knowledge and power, with Mephistopheles as the ultimate tempter. In parallel, folk beliefs wove the demonic into everyday life. Crossroads, graveyards, and abandoned ruins became liminal spaces where demons might appear, bargain, or haunt the unwary. Protective talismans, crosses, holy water, prayers served defensively, relics of spiritual technology developed through centuries. Legends spoke of demons infiltrating homes as mice or shadows, whispering doubts to children and elders alike, always eager to divide and conquer. The Renaissance and Enlightenment brought new challenges to traditional demonology. The growing dominance of reason and scientific inquiry pushed many to explain away demonic phenomena as superstition or mental illness. Yet, belief in demons did not vanish. Rather, it transformed. Occultism rose alongside rationalism, with secret societies and esoteric orders claiming to communicate with or command spirits, often weaving Christian demonology with other mystical traditions. The dichotomy of science and superstition coexisted uneasily, shadows lengthening as technology illuminated the world. In more recent history, the trauma of war, social upheaval, and existential dread fueled renewed fascination with demons as symbols of evil and chaos. The 20th century's cataclysms resurrected the metaphor of demonic possession on a societal scale. Totalitarian regimes as demonic forces sweeping away virtue and freedom, ideologies as temptations to pride and wrath. Psychology and psychiatry offer new explanations for behaviors once ascribed to demonic influence. Mental illness, addiction, and trauma reframed in medical terms. Yet the spiritual tradition lingers, a persistent undertone in religious communities, where demonic possession, temptation, and exorcism remain potent realities for many believers. Perhaps most compelling is the insight that demons are not only external enemies, but also avatars of inner battles. The struggle against them is mirrored in the daily fight to resist pride, to subdue envy, to reclaim love in the face of lust, to hold fast to hope against despair. This internalized demonology poses a timeless question. How to discern the difference between the shadow that walks beside us and the shadow that lurks within. As the story progresses, one must remember that the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture embody both cosmic rebellion and personal ruin. Their tales remind us that the war between light and darkness is never only grand or mythical, but lived in the quiet moments of choice, in the prayers whispered in the dark, in the resolve to resist that which corrodes the soul. Throughout the sprawling chronicles of human history, the dance between divine light and infernal shadow persisted relentlessly. As the story of the worst demons of Judeo-Christian tradition unfolds, the tragedies and triumphs of this cosmic conflict become ever more intricate, revealing layers of meaning and menace ingrained deeply into the fabric of faith, culture, and human experience. Beneath the imagined flames of hell and the unyielding gaze of heaven, the fallen angels evolved in myth and power, their stories shaped as much by human need to comprehend evil as by ancient scriptural foundations. The fourth part of this grand narrative delves into the legendary battles that shaped the cosmic order and the cultural ripples extending from these dark figures into medieval, Renaissance, and modern consciousness. In the biblical apocrypha and legendary traditions, one of the most gripping episodes centers on the Watchers, angels who descended to earth and, through their transgressions, brought forth an age of profound corruption. Known as the Grigori or the Watchers, these entities were tasked with overseeing humanity, but instead succumbed to forbidden desires, breeding the Nephilim, giants whose very existence defied the divine order. The corruption they sowed among mortals precipitated not only moral decay, but cosmic retribution, leading directly to the flood which purged the earth. Among these Watchers, figures like Azazel and Samyaza are the most infamous. Azazel, as previously introduced, taught mankind the arts of war and metal craftsmanship, knowledge that, while remarkable, became a double-edged sword bringing devastation and bloodshed. Samyaza rallied the fallen angels, binding them to their pact, concealing their doom. Yet their influence lingered in whispered legends and shadowed morality tales across Jewish, Christian, and even Islamic lore. The flood's aftermath saw the banishment not only of the Watchers, but also a reassessment of the balance of power. The demonic host, while diminished, found new ways to infiltrate the realms of men and women. The post-Diluvian world was a crucible where the seeds of temptation, envy, and violent ambition took profound root. This period marked a dark interlude, as societies struggled against internal corruption and external threats, many of which were attributed to the ceaseless machinations of infernal spirits. The writings of the Church Fathers further elaborated on these legends, placing fallen angels not only as seducers of humanity, but as enemies of the angels themselves. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, emerged as divine champions, combating the spread of evil. Saint Michael, the warrior archangel, became legendary for casting Lucifer and his cohorts into hell with a decisive battle that shifted celestial tides. His image, clad in armor and wielding a sword, symbolized divine justice and the relentless fight against darkness. In artistic representations from medieval times, Michael's victories became subjects of illuminated manuscripts, grand frescoes, and cathedral sculptures, inspiring generations to see the concept of spiritual warfare as an eternal, militant contest. His armored figure was a beacon of hope amid fears about demonic influence on earthly affairs and personal salvation. The notion of spiritual warfare was reinforced by biblical exhortations such as those found in Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This profound verse urged believers to arm themselves with faith, truth, righteousness, and prayer, acknowledging that demons were real, formidable, and persistent enemies. During the High Middle Ages, the theological framework around demons deepened and diversified. The scholastic theologians systematized knowledge, integrating earlier folklore and scripture into organized study. Thomas Aquinas's Summa Theologica offered one of the most influential treatments, describing demons as pure spirits, fallen angels deprived of their original grace and incapable of repentance. They are bound eternally to malevolence, seeking to tempt humans away from God's grace at every opportunity. These teachings influenced not only clerical understanding, but popular imagination concerning demons, capabilities, and constraints. For instance, demons, being spirits, were understood to possess immense speed and cunning, but were also bound by divine limitation. They could not force a soul to sin, only invite it. Free will remained a sacred human prerogative, preserving the dramatic tension of temptation and virtue. Alongside theological advances, the medieval period gave rise to a rich folklore concerning demons. Folk tales abounded with encounters between men and devils. Faustian bargains where knowledge or power was won at the cost of the soul. Trickster demons who delighted in confusing travelers at crossroads. Night spirits like the incubus and succubus, who preyed upon sleepers by invading dreams and bodies. The incubus and succubus represent an especially sinister category of demons, drawing from ancient traditions and evolving through centuries. The incubus was imagined as a male demon visiting women, inducing nightmares and sapping life force, sometimes leading to pregnancies attributed to supernatural paternity. Conversely, the succubus preyed upon men, seducing, draining vitality, and feeding off lust and despair. These spirits embodied the dangers of uncontrolled desire and the moral perils feared by religious society. The Church's response to such supernatural threats included the development of intense rituals and a formalized role for the exorcist, priests specifically trained and empowered to confront and expel demonic presences. These rites, steeped in scripture and tradition, testified to the belief that the spiritual realm intersected violently with earthly reality. Famously, the Malleus Maleficarum codified the understanding of demons in the context of witchcraft, presenting a grim view that many suspected witches were agents or victims of demonic influence, bound by pacts to serve evil ends. The reverberations of this belief were tragic, leading to widespread persecution in Europe and the New World, with thousands accused, tortured, and executed in attempts to purge society of demonic contamination. Despite the brutality of witch hunts and inquisitions, these events further entrenched demons in the religious consciousness as active and dangerous foes. Stories circulated of deals struck in shadowed forests, magical rites performed under blood moons, and pacts sealed with infernal signatures. The cultural imprint of these fears resonated far beyond their immediate historical contexts, eventually permeating literature, theater, and later film. The Renaissance introduced both skepticism and occult fascination. With the rediscovery of classical texts and expanding knowledge, some thinkers probed beneath surface fears to embrace more nuanced or even symbiotic views of demonology. Occult philosophers like Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa examined demons within frameworks mixing magic, astrology, and Christian theology, attempting to understand or even harness their powers. Meanwhile, the horrific, cruel nature of demons was preserved in popular imaginations, entwined with new discoveries and innovations. Across the centuries, the worst demons, Lucifer, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, Leviathan, Belial, Mammon, Azazel, Legion, and others, remained archetypal figures. Their stories were recounted and reinterpreted, symbols of human frailty and cosmic rebellion. Their domains expanded beyond ancient texts into modern symbolism, embodiments of ideological evil, spiritual despair, and moral degradation. Modern culture continues to grapple with these demons, sometimes demythologizing them as metaphors for psychological or social ills, but often recognizing their enduring power as representation of profound human fears and temptations. Horror films, novels, and theological debates keep the legacy alive, engaging with these ancient struggles in new forms. Ultimately, the narrative of these demons in Judeo-Christian tradition is more than myth or folklore. It is a recounting of the forces that shape human existence: temptation, pride, betrayal, and redemption. They embody the persistent challenge to uphold virtue in a world fraught with shadows, where every soul faces the choice to yield or resist. As the shadows lengthen across the centuries, the narrative of demons grows ever more complex and multifaceted. The story of the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture is woven not only through sacred texts and theological treatises, but also into the collective psyche of civilizations, reflecting the eternal struggle between sanctity and sin, order and chaos, light and darkness. Part 5 delves into how these infernal beings have shaped cultural perspectives, moral theology, and personal spirituality across epochs and lands. Moving beyond the medieval and Renaissance periods, one finds the figure of Satan among the most enigmatic and enduring in demonology, evolving from a mere adversary into a multi-dimensional character with vast symbolic weight. The New Testament portrays Satan principally as the tempter and accuser, but later literature and art explore his pride, ambition, and tragic fall in profound depth. John Milton's Paradise Lost champions this intricate portrayal, casting Satan as a fallen archangel whose rebel cry echoes through the cosmos: "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." This powerful expression is not simply an epic poetic flourish, but crystallizes the essence of demonic rebellion, pride that refuses submission, and a ceaseless striving for power, even in damnation. Milton's work profoundly influenced subsequent interpretations, shaping theological, literary, and popular views. Satan became both the personification of ultimate evil and, paradoxically, a cautionary figure displaying the devastating costs of pride and disobedience. His complex characterization bridges the stark binaries of good and evil, forcing contemplation on the nuances of free will, suffering, and redemption. Not long after, in the realms of folklore and superstition, the demonic realm expanded through local beliefs and customs, often absorbing characteristics from pagan deities and spirits. For example, European folklore assimilated the qualities of forest spirits, night hags, and trickster creatures into the demonic pantheon. This syncretism enriched the demonological tapestry, presenting demons not merely as fiery tormentors, but also as cunning tempters, shapeshifters, and even malignant tricksters, capable of mischief as well as malevolence. In the 17th and 18th centuries, as the Age of Enlightenment dawned, the intellectual landscape shifted. Reason and skepticism questioned many traditional beliefs, and the literal existence of demons became a point of contention. Still, the spiritual and psychological realities attributed to demons persisted, manifesting in new forms. Demonology intersected with emerging understandings of mental illness, possession, and the subconscious. The rise of psychiatry recast many phenomena once ascribed to demonic forces as neurological or psychological disorders, leading to a gradual secularization of the discourse. Yet, exorcisms and spiritual battles continued, sometimes accommodating new knowledge about the mind's fragility while affirming the belief in real malevolent spirits. In parallel, occult movements of the 19th and 20th centuries, such as spiritualism, theosophy, and various magical traditions, engaged with the demonic in complex and often contradictory ways. Some sought to communicate or even command spirits, including demons, as sources of hidden knowledge or power. Others embraced demons as symbolic forces of liberation, rebellion, or introspective challenge. This ambivalence toward demons reveals a persistent human fascination with the boundaries between good and evil, the sacred and profane, the known and the mysterious. Within this vast cultural milieu, specific demons retain prominence as archetypes of sin and spiritual danger. Lucifer, the morning star, remained the archetype of pride and rebellion, his shining beauty now a mask concealing profound ruin. Beelzebub, once a mighty cherub, personified decay and corruption, inspiring dread through his ability to infest and rot communities. Asmodeus, the demon of lust, spun webs of seduction and destruction, turning love into a weapon of ruin. Leviathan, the raging sea monster, symbolized envy and chaos, his coils representing the suffocating grip of jealousy. Belial, master of lies and deceit, continued to unravel justice and truth wherever his venomous breath reached. Mammon, the insatiable lord of greed, drove men to hoard riches at the cost of their souls. Azazel, the corrupter, whispered forbidden knowledges that twisted mortal invention into instruments of death and destruction. Alongside these stand the lesser-known but no less dangerous demons who personify subtle vices and torments, including the legions whose collective name embodies unbounded evil. The multiplicity of legion mirrors the chaotic, diffused threat that evil poses to human society and individual morality alike. The theological significance of demons in Judeo-Christian tradition transcends fear and fascination. It addresses profound questions about human nature, freedom, and redemption. Demons exist not only as antagonists, but as reflecting mirrors of humanity's vulnerabilities, each demon a symbol of a facet of the soul that risks corruption. Their presence challenges believers to cultivate virtue, to engage in spiritual warfare with weapons of faith, prayer, and sacraments. The rituals developed to contend with demonic influences are rich and enduring. The sacrament of exorcism, a ritual codified and renewed across centuries, embodies the Church's assertion of divine power over darkness. These rites draw directly upon Scripture, invoking the names of God, saints, and angels to command demons to depart. Historically, exorcisms have produced accounts of miraculous liberation and enduring faith, testifying to the living nature of this spiritual battle. Moreover, the Christian understanding of salvation and grace emphasizes that no soul is beyond redemption, even those ensnared or tempted by demons. The stories of saints who have overcome demonic trials illustrate the possibilities of triumph through humility, love, and surrender to the divine will. In modern times, the depiction of demons remains vivid in art, literature, and popular culture. Films, novels, and games draw upon millennia of demonological lore, reinterpreting these ancient foes in contexts ranging from horror to psychological drama. Their symbolic potency endures because the themes they represent, temptation, pride, lust, despair, are as relevant now as in any age. Yet, beyond spectacle, these stories invite reflection on the inner spiritual journey. They urge the recognition that the worst demons are not always external fiends, but often the struggles within, the lies we tell ourselves, the ambitions that blind us, the fears that paralyze us. The Judeo-Christian demonology, therefore, is a profound map of human fallibility and a call to vigilance, faith, and hope. Throughout history, the presence and representation of demons have continually evolved, mirroring the shifting landscapes of human belief, knowledge, and spiritual experience. Part 6 of this extensive narrative explores the complexities of demonology as it confronted the Enlightenment, the rise of occult practices, and the challenges of modernity, all while preserving the ancient essence of these dark entities as symbols of evil, temptation, and human frailty. As the Age of Reason dawned in Europe, traditional religious beliefs, including the literal acceptance of demons, encountered new scrutiny. The scientific revolution began to offer natural explanations for phenomena once deemed supernatural. Mental illness, epilepsy, sleep paralysis, and other conditions were increasingly diagnosed as medical rather than diabolical, leading to a decline in the official church's emphasis on demonic possession and witchcraft trials. This rationalism, however, did not completely erode popular belief. Folklore and superstition persisted among the general populace, often in syncretic forms that blended Christian demonology with folk traditions and local fears. Simultaneously, the 18th and 19th centuries witnessed a resurgence of interest in the occult and mysticism. Movements such as spiritualism claimed communication with spirits, angels, and demons. Occultists and secret societies, like the Rosicrucians and later Theosophists, delved into angelology and demonology from esoteric perspectives, seeking hidden knowledge about the spiritual world. Demons, under these interpretations, were sometimes cast as not purely evil, but as complex beings with ambiguous roles, occasionally even as catalysts for personal transformation or forbidden knowledge. This ambivalence highlighted a cultural reimagining. Demons were no longer only external enemies, but also archetypes within the psyche, manifestations of inner shadows, fears, desires, and repressed aspects of the self. Psychological theories in the 20th century, especially with the advent of psychoanalysis, contributed to this shift. Carl Jung and others explored the notion of the shadow, the unconscious parts of the personality containing denied impulses that might, in religious terms, be demonized facets of the soul. This psychological demonology has provided a new framework for understanding the ancient myths. Demons become metaphors for internal struggles and moral challenges rather than literal beings. However, the Church and many believers worldwide continue to affirm the reality of demons as personal spiritual entities. The Catholic Church, for instance, retained and updated the rite of exorcism, recognizing that spiritual affliction and demonic possession still occurred. Cases of exorcisms, some well documented and publicly known, have reaffirmed the contemporary reality of demons in the spiritual worldview of many communities. These events often involve intense confrontations where prayer, holy relics, and sacramental rites combat malevolent forces seeking to unsettle or possess. In popular culture, the legacy of Judeo-Christian demons flourished in new forms. Literature, film, and television reimagined demonic themes for audiences fascinated by horror, suspense, and the metaphysical battle between good and evil. From classic horror tales inspired by The Exorcist to modern reinterpretations in fantasy and supernatural genres, demons remained potent symbols of existential dread and temptation. These portrayals, though sometimes sensationalized, keep alive the cultural memory of these beings and their archetypal presence. Beyond artistic representation, the continued interest in demons signals deep human concerns. The battle against pride, greed, lust, envy, wrath, gluttony, and sloth. The 7 deadly sins personified by demonic archetypes. This enduring struggle remains relevant, whether interpreted religiously, psychologically, or metaphorically. Demons, in this light, reflect not only cosmic rebellion, but the daily spiritual warfare within each person's conscience and choices. Moreover, modern theological reflections emphasize that the ultimate victory lies in grace, redemption, and hope. The story of demons does not end in doom alone, but points toward the possibility of salvation and healing. Saints who faced demonic temptation, such as Saint Anthony, Saint Benedict, and others, serve as examples of resilience and faith. Their encounters underscore the idea that demons, while fearsome, are bounded and can be overcome through contrition, prayer, and divine aid. This narration reveals that the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture are at once ancient and ever-present. Their shadows extend through history, theology, psychology, and culture, challenging humanity in myriad ways. Whether understood as literal fallen angels poised against the divine, symbols of moral dangers, or archetypes within the unconscious, these demons persist as a profound element of the human story, reminding us of the fragile boundary between light and darkness, faith and doubt, order and chaos. At the heart of this enduring narrative lies an ever-present tension. Demons embody the very forces that oppose divine harmony and human goodness. Yet these forces are not merely external villains. They represent internal adversaries, shadow aspects of the self that threaten to unravel the soul's integrity. This dual nature, both cosmic antagonist and intimate tempter, ensures that demons remain relevant across ages and contexts. One of the most striking features of the Judeo-Christian demonological tradition is the vivid characterization of individual demons, each associated with particular sins or vices. These personifications constitute a moral lexicon, offering a way to understand and combat the varied forms of evil. Lucifer, the morning star, stands supreme among them, a tragic figure whose fall signifies the origin of evil itself. His pride, born of a desire to rival God, marks the archetype of rebellion against divine order and the catastrophic consequences of hubris. Lucifer's narrative is not merely one of loss, but also of perpetual defiance, a relentless refusal to yield that fuels the ceaseless battle between good and evil. His character inspires both dread and fascination, as his figure embodies the paradox of magnificent light turned to ruinous darkness. Beelzebub, termed the Lord of the Flies, symbolizes decay and corruption, wielding influence through pestilence and rot, not only physical but spiritual. His domain extends into the putrescence of societies, infecting not just bodies but systems of power, fostering fear, greed, and despair among communities. The flies swarming in images of him evoke the inescapable knowing nature of moral decay. The demon Asmodeus is the embodiment of lust and destructive passion. His subtle machinations unravel the fabric of love and fidelity, replacing devotion with selfish desire and betrayal. Stories often portray him lurking in intimate spaces, turning noble intentions into ruinous acts as he seduces and corrupts. The destructive consequences of uncontrolled lust resonate through countless moral teaching traditions, with Asmodeus a constant reminder of this peril. Leviathan, vast sea monster and demon of envy, represents a cold, consuming force that breeds division and strife. His realm, deep, dark waters, mimics the dangerous depths of jealousy, where peaceful relationships are undone through suspicion, resentment, and malice. Leviathan's power lies not in physical destruction alone, but in twisting the human heart against its brethren. Belial, whose name connotes worthlessness or lawlessness, stands as a master of deceit and lies. He operates through manipulation, perverting truth to serve his ends, undermining justice and trust. Belial's influence is insidious. It erodes the structures of society, turning noble causes into farces and faith into fanaticism. His presence is felt wherever duplicity and corruption reign. Mammon embodies greed, the insatiable desire for wealth and possessions that blinds the soul to higher purposes. This demon tempts individuals and nations to prioritize material gain over spiritual well-being. His influence spawns countless conflicts fueled by avarice, where the love of riches becomes an idol, severing humanity from divine grace. Azazel, a name evocative of impurity and scapegoating, has a complex role in demonology. According to apocryphal sources, he taught mankind forbidden secrets, metallurgy, weapon-making, ushering in technological knowledge that, while remarkable, facilitated violence and moral decline. Azazel's story cautions about the double-edged nature of knowledge divorced from wisdom and virtue. Finally, Legion, a collective of unclean spirits, represents the chaotic and multitudinous forces of evil. Unlike singular demons, Legion exemplifies the overwhelming, diffuse nature of sin and spiritual assault, capable of possessing and fracturing a single individual entirely. This multiplicity underscores the pervasive and relentless assault of evil on the human soul and society. These figures, while distinctive, function collectively within an infernal hierarchy that is both structured and fluid. Their activities manifest through temptations, possessions, societal decay, and the subtle erosion of faith and morality. The biblical narrative, ecclesiastical teachings, theological expositions, and folklore converge in painting a picture of an unending spiritual battle in which these demons are the chief antagonists. Beyond their traditional identities, the worst demons serve as cautionary symbols within the annual liturgical and moral rhythms of Judeo-Christian communities. The 7 capital sins, pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, are linked intricately to demonic temptations, offering believers a framework to recognize and resist their insidious pull. Confession, penance, prayer, and the cultivation of virtues become weapons in this spiritual war, aimed at excising the contaminations introduced by these infernal forces. The cultural penetration of these demonological archetypes extended deeply into art and literature over centuries. From the medieval tapestries showing Saint Michael vanquishing the dragon to Renaissance paintings depicting tempters and demonic seducers, visual arts reinforced theological ideals and fears. Similarly, literature from Dante's vivid Inferno to Goethe's tragic Faust captures the demons, terrifying power and existential significance. In folk traditions, demons appear in myriad local guises, whether as household spirits gone malevolent or as evil entities haunting natural landmarks. Protective customs and talismans, holy water, crucifixes, salt, prayers became commonplace defenses against demonic influence. Such practices underscore the lived reality and fear surrounding these dark beings, beyond abstract theology into everyday human experience. The Renaissance and afterward brought a renewed interest in esotericism and occult knowledge. Figures such as Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa compiled grimoires cataloging demon names, ranks, and attributes, blending Judeo-Christian demonology with pagan and magical traditions. While some sought to harness demonic power, others aimed to understand and counter it through rigorous study and spiritual discipline. The Enlightenment challenged traditional demonology on intellectual grounds, but did not eradicate its influence entirely. Instead, the language of demons shifted, intersecting with emerging psychology, philosophy, and cultural expression. The shadow archetype of Carl Jung, among others, provided a potent metaphor for the inner demons all humans confront, the repressed desires, fears, and impulses lurking beneath the conscious mind. Modern culture reflects this legacy robustly. Demons dominate horror fiction and films, video games, and even music, operating both as terrifying external threats and as symbols of internal psychological conflict. This cultural arena ensures that the motifs of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, and their infernal kin remain alive and influential, interpreted anew for each generation. Yet the Judeo-Christian tradition consistently emphasizes that these worst demons, no matter their cunning or power, are ultimately subordinate to divine providence and mercy. The narrative closes always with a call to hope, repentance, and the possibility of salvation. The victories of saints and martyrs, the power of prayer and sacrament, and the ongoing spiritual warfare engage believers in a lived reality where demons can be resisted and overcome. This enduring story of the worst demons thus serves multiple purposes. It explains the existence of evil, offers moral guidance, encourages spiritual resilience, and reflects profound truths about the human condition. It is a saga of cosmic rebellion and personal struggle, a cautionary tale and a source of hope, inviting each individual to recognize the shadow's presence and choose the path of light. As the final chapter of this extensive journey draws near, it is fitting to reflect on the multifaceted roles these worst demons play within Judeo-Christian tradition, their origins, symbols, and enduring influence on faith, culture, and the human soul. Far beyond tales of terror and darkness, their stories embody the profound drama of the cosmic struggle between good and evil, and the personal battles within every human heart. The narrative of these demons culminates in their complex relationship with humanity's hope for redemption and grace. Though fallen and forever exiled from the celestial realms, demons are not merely forces of destruction, but also instruments revealing the necessity and power of divine mercy. They are the night that makes the dawn's light poignant, the abyss that heightens the triumph of faith and virtue. Among the most potent of these demons Lucifer remains the tragic emblem of rebellion and pride, a cautionary exemplar, warning against the seduction of self-exaltation in defiance of divine order. His radiant beauty twisted into a symbol of ruin, Lucifer's tale implores believers to choose humility, submission to God's will, and love instead of selfish ambition. Beelzebub's ruinous domain, a realm of decay and pestilence, reveals the insidious nature of corruption, not only in bodies, but within societies, where spiritual rot renders communities vulnerable to tyranny and despair. Through this demon, the narrative warns of neglecting moral health in favor of material or earthly power. Asmodeus's seductive snares illustrate the dangers inherent in unrestrained desire, betrayal, and the distortion of love. His story is a timeless echo of the need for chastity, fidelity, and respect for the sacredness of human relationships, virtues essential to sustaining both personal and communal well-being. Leviathan's cold grip of envy deepens into the fracturing of bonds that hold families, peoples, and nations together. He serves as a potent symbol of the corrosive nature of jealousy, which can undercut all forms of unity and peace if left unchecked. Belial's perfidious lies and his undermining of truth and justice stand as a warning against duplicity and the erosion of integrity. His mask of trust conceals treachery, reminding us that evil often operates beneath the surface of appearances, and that vigilance is essential in safeguarding faith and society. Mammon's insatiable greed, and all it embodies, challenges humanity to confront the temptations of materialism and to seek riches of the soul over those of the world. His domain encourages reflection on the true value of wealth, generosity, and the dangers of hoarding treasures that cannot ultimately satisfy. Azazel's gift of forbidden knowledge, entwined with death and destruction, offers a sobering lesson on the double-edged nature of human innovation. That wisdom absent virtue is a dangerous force capable of great harm. The collective demon legion, with its overwhelming multitude, captures the chaotic and vast scope of evil, reminding us of the profound fragility and resilience of the human spirit when assailed by forces both internal and external. Together, these demons form a pantheon of warnings and exemplars, shaping a moral architecture for believers throughout history and across cultures. Their stories have been retold in sacred texts, examined in theological discourse, dramatized in literature and art, and lived out in personal spiritual warfare. Importantly, Judeo-Christian tradition emphasizes that while demons are real and formidable adversaries, they are ultimately subject to divine authority and goodness. The power of God, manifest through Jesus Christ, the archangels, saints, and the sacraments, offers believers victory over these dark forces. The ritual of exorcism, prayers for protection, and the cultivation of virtues are practical expressions of this ongoing spiritual battle. Moreover, the narrative of demons invites a deeper introspection. The greatest war is often internal, fought in moments of temptation, doubt, despair, and moral decision. Each human soul carries the potential for both light and shadow. The choice to resist pride, envy, lust, greed, wrath, gluttony, and sloth determines the soul's destiny. In the modern age, as belief in demons is interpreted variously, from literal beings to psychological archetypes, their stories still resonate because they articulate fundamental truths about the human condition. They symbolize the universal struggle to overcome the forces that divide, destroy, and degrade. Ultimately, the saga of the worst demons of Judeo-Christian culture is a profound meditation on evil's nature and humanity's capacity for holiness. It echoes across centuries as a call to vigilance, courage, repentance, and hope. It reminds us that despite the darkness that seeks to consume, light persists, and through faith, love, and grace, the shadow can be overcome.